Welcome to a community built of tomorrow's business leaders. Hey guys, I'm William Freitas, and this is the Socius podcast. Jason Hardie, welcome to the show.
Well,
mate, great to have you. I guess first to start off with, let's introduce yourself. Yeah, who are you? What do you do? Where have you come from? What's led to you to be where you are today?
Sure. Well, firstly, thanks for having me on the show. Well, it's great to see you. So my name's Jason Hardie for listeners. I'm the co-founder of a business called Digital Village. Digital Village is a platform business or a network of people in the IT industry, of which we build teams and run projects. So everyone specialises in a different skill set or practice in the digital space, and it's our job to curate a team on a project basis and deliver outcomes. So those are typically any kind of software development projects, websites, apps, any kind of business IT solution. Anything. It's quite a broad range. So
I think you've put that pretty well, mate, because I think when most people hear I'm in the IT space, they kind of just blank off. You've made it pretty, I guess, clear in the sense that you can work with a number of different clients. You do websites, app development, software. Yeah.
So like our customers really range from startups. So we help them validate ideas, building MVPs, taking it to market, and prototyping and testing and following a high feedback loop of validating assumptions with testing with users, getting feedback and continuous iteration and improvement until eventually it's profitable and in the market and serving customers and producing value. So we work with a lot of startups, and then we work with SMEs as well. And that's probably most of the solutions that we provide there are around automation, systemizing business processes. So we'll go in and essentially do an analysis of a business process and look at how technology can reduce some costs and time and improve efficiency. And so there'll be a lot of data work in that, in understanding what their business is doing, what their customers value. So we implement a lot of dashboards using, kind of intelligence derived from their data sets, whether it be financial information or customer data, or process information of whatever systems they might be using, and then gaining insights from that for them to provide, to make better business decisions. So a lot of that kind of work. And then we work with enterprise as well, which funnily enough, it's a similar kind of service that we provide to startups. So ultimately our service to corporates is a kind of startup mindset because we come from our business or the people in it, excuse me, are kind of from startup land. And so the teams within it also, there is an entrepreneurial mindset and approach to product development or solving problems that is of high value to those organizations who are typically pretty slow moving, needing to adopt a more agile mindset and test new products or value propositions to market. And so this kind of startup approach enables them to do that. So they can bring us in to run projects.
Which is really interesting, right? Because that's likely what the bigger companies are lacking, or the enterprise businesses are lacking. They don't have that entrepreneurial mindset, which is fantastic, sort of bringing you and your team in. And I do want to get to, I guess, talking a little bit more about your team. But before we do that, let's dive into who Jason Hardie is and where you came from. I mean, this is going to be, I guess, an outlandish topic, point here. But you're a good-looking bloke, mate. How'd you get into IT? I thought you'd be in modelling.
Oh, thanks, mate. I'm actually from a place called Dirranbandi, which is, I grew up on a property out there, which is southwest Queensland, about 8 hours west of Brisbane. And so I wasn't really exposed to IT out there.
I mean, are we talking farmland? Are we talking countryside?
Small
village?
Like bush.
Okay.
is probably the best way to describe it. So it's where I'm from. It's kind of like flood country when it floods, which is kind of rare. So it's either quite dry for many years at a time, and then the whole place goes underwater.
Yeah, right.
By up to 2 meters, 1 meter, 2 meters sometimes.
Yeah, wow. How many times did you experience flood?
We sold the property when I was 17, and so I was actually born in Longreach, which is central. All my family's actually from central Queensland.
Yeah.
We moved down just after I was born, and so in that time at Dirranbandi, there was like a handful of big floods. I think it was 1990 or 91 or something. 1990, 05. So there was probably like maybe 4 big floods.
Okay.
Where everything goes under. They're kind of like, max. I probably have that wrong, but something like that.
Yeah.
And then so the whole place goes under, and it's quite an amazing sight.
How did that shape who you are today? Out of curiosity. I mean, you have a flood every so often,
I think
you're looking over the shoulder.
Yeah. I think more than anything, not so much the floods, but the work that was involved in the dry times was probably the most shaping.
Yeah.
Because it was really and just kind of seeing this, especially on my dad and how he kind of navigated that. It's very, very testing. And the more I kind of look back on those times, you're kind of naive to it as a kid, but bugger that.
What sort of work are we talking?
So feeding stock primarily.
Okay.
So there's like no food to eat. So you'll be out there every day shoveling cottonseed for the cattle to eat or the sheep to eat.
Yeah, right.
And so that was actually quite a lot of good memories of that. But they're very they're pretty stressful times. And there's just sheep dying in creek beds, and there's a lot of death becomes you're exposed to a lot of it as a kid.
Interesting.
It's just a big part of life in the bush. And so I think amongst that, and also the work ethic, I think is also something that's shaped me, and something that I've carried into business, I think.
And did you get your hands dirty per se, or you sort of mentioned that was mainly your dad? I mean, how old were you when you were there, and when did you leave?
Yeah, so no, so I've got 2 brothers.
Okay.
And so it's something that is it is a family run farm. So everyone gets there, including mum. We'd all be out there, mustering and managing stock. And then we got into wheat and cotton, towards, as time went on as well. So, through summer, you'd be out there every morning, 4 o'clock, starting siphons, Christmas Day included every year. So it's like you can't skip a day. And so that, it became just a kind of normal way of life. And I guess I used to, especially as a teenager, be a little bit adverse to that. Well, why do we have to do this? You have a bit of a whinge.
Yeah.
But looking back on it, it was, I'm really glad, because it was really important. We were kind of working as hard as any other workers. We were kind of an important part of the operations of the farm. Did your dad relied on?
I guess did your dad have staff, or was it really just you and your brothers?
There was in the early days there was one employee. And then that kind of grew. It's a lot of contractors, because it was kind of seasonal work. So you'll get contractors in to do picking and whatever it might be. But there was a lot of responsibility put on me and my brothers, being provisioned with a big tractor to go and do something. And there was a lot of times we completely messed it up.
Yeah.
And that was really, I guess that was really shaping as well, of taking responsibility for things, and and I find a lot of satisfaction in that now, rather than being, avoiding it.
And how old were you when you left the farm?
17.
Okay. And then you guys moved to New South Wales?
No, so we actually moved to the Sunshine Coast.
Okay.
I did uni there.
A bit closer.
Yeah. And I did uni there, and that's kind
IT
of where
uni?
that's where I got exposed to. It's funny, I never actually, even at school, which I kind of regret, or it just wasn't really a thing at school, IT. Like, it was a little bit, but I don't know, it must have been the times, and the school's kind of outdated as a bit of a system, right? So the digital revolution hadn't really, or the education system hadn't really caught up with what was happening.
Right.
And even at uni, I actually got into marketing, and then I continued just following my interests from marketing into design. And so I changed degrees like 3 or 4 times. And then from design into technology, and I just kind of liked all those different areas as it evolved. And even at uni, we were learning Actionscript, which at the same time was obsolete. So it was like a complete waste of time learning that. But it's like I think the education system's improved a hell of a lot since then, and they are adopting more agile, ways of learning.
I'll be honest here. What's Actionscript?
Oh, it's a programming language used to create animations, essentially.
Right, and it's no longer used because...
Yeah, so I can't remember, Flash.
Yep.
So you create like Flash,
Yep.
projects with that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And yeah, it was a lot of fun, but it's completely useless now because Flash is no longer supported by browsers.
Yeah.
Mostly.
And so you grew up in the bush. I guess had that experience with your family. I guess getting your hands dirty and building that work ethic, to then coming to uni in Sunshine Coast. And then, how long were you in Sunshine Coast for?
I was there for a few years, and then I actually moved to the Gold Coast.
Yep.
While I went studying part-time because I'd started a horse training business.
Okay. So you do some horse riding as well?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So, grew up on horses, did a lot of horse work as kids.
Yeah, cool.
And I went up, down to the Gold Coast. Followed a girl there, actually, as life seemed to happen. But it was good, and I got a job working in a show called the Outback Spectacular, which is part of Warner Brothers, it's part of the movie world thing.
So I wasn't too far off the modelling career.
Performance, anyway, I was bloody terrible at it. I was very, very shy and didn't really like a lot of that things, but I did enjoy riding the horses. It was a really good experience. Show business is pretty
cutthroat.
It is, and it's, I don't know, it's the people in it. It just kind of attracts a certain type of person, or not necessarily that, but it has a kind of culture within it that is, there's just a lot of ego, I suppose.
Right.
And that was a bit of a challenge, but it was a really good experience. There were some really good horsemen there, and I learned quite a bit on some different, techniques of riding, such as Roman riding, which is where you've got 2 horses and you're standing on the back of the 2 horses riding along, which, I've never done that before.
Yeah.
And there's some really good horses there as well. So it was a lot of fun, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then so I had a horse training business as well, which I'd do during the day. So I just have different clients around the region. I'd go around and they'll have a problem with their horse, so help them with that, and then also teaching people to ride as well, so from adults to kids. So it'd usually be they'd have a horse, it'd be fooling around because they don't know how to work it.
Right.
So I'd train the horse and then teach them how to ride it. And that was probably one of my favourite jobs, actually. I loved that, yeah. It was really rewarding.
And do you still have some involvement now? We're coming pretty far through, but do you still have some involvement with horses now, or is it still just a past thing?
No,
okay.
I don't, and I don't know. Horses are I don't know if I'd ever have my own at this stage. They're very expensive. They take a lot of looking after.
Right.
And I don't have time for that.
Yeah, fair enough.
I do love. They're the most beautiful animal, and I love them. So maybe one day, but yeah, not at this stage.
And so you've come down to the Gold Coast. You chased a girl,
and
managed to get onto, a show, doing some horse riding, and being part of a spectacular. Then where'd you go through from there?
And then, so by that time I'd finished uni as well.
Yep.
And so at the same time I was doing some freelance.
And at uni you were studying IT?
I was studying.
You went from
computer-based design and electronic media. So that involved web development and digital design.
So how did you? What made you go from marketing to design to IT? Like
purely interest. I wasn't a big fan of school because I didn't know why I was doing things, and I wasn't really interested in the things that I was doing. So I couldn't.
Yeah.
I wasn't attentive.
Yeah.
And so as soon as I had the opportunity to choose things that I was like, shit, that's interesting. And then I was like fully focused on it. And then, and so comparatively I did quite well at uni. Because I changed degrees a bunch of times because I kept following my interests. So I started off with like a business degree, and I liked the marketing side of that because it was kind of creative, and then I liked the design side of that because it was again creative and it was a way to kind of express, I suppose, and then that got me exposed to the more digital side, and I just remember I was like, holy shit, technology, like. And it was like I was just fascinated by the possibility and the potential of technology, because ultimately anything's possible. Like you're really only limited by your imagination, and I just grabbed hold of that, and that's kind of got me into what I'm doing now.
It's such an enabler, really, isn't it?
Really,
which is where I'm taking particular interest, because it's interesting how you can become, grow up on a bush, go to riding horses to then get into IT. Let's go a little step backwards. How much direction did your parents give you in picking subjects? Because really it sounded like you found IT, not IT found you. You chased it, you went to marketing, design, and you were like, wow, this is really interesting. Often we find, in society probably less so now, but particularly in the past, it was like, okay, your parents were like, you're going to school, you're becoming a doctor, a nurse, or an accountant, whatever it might be. How much direction did they give you, or did they give you full reign and say, look, it's up to you?
Completely right. And that was something that was really evident in the school I went to, and I wasn't very good with that kind of pressure being put upon me, and my parents knew that, and so grateful to them that they just gave me the space to kind of work shit out for myself. And they were just super supportive. Like they didn't try and pigeonhole me into any direction or anything like that. And they just supported in different things that I was trying to do. I mean, I'd always been kind of doing different things, and they've always been supportive of that. So I'm really grateful, because that wouldn't have worked if they'd tried to push me down a road. And I guess they knew that, but it is a problem though, isn't it? A lot of
Absolutely.
people, and then they end up getting into careers that they just don't want to do, and then they study, and then they're like, shit, I better get a job in doing that. So I'll do that, and then they'll be doing that for. They're like, why am I doing this?
Absolutely, that's the biggest issue, and I think a lot of people then at that point struggle with, what is it that I want to do?
Yeah.
Because they've invested so much time in one particular area, one particular profession. They're like, well, I've studied law for 6 years, I'm going to do law. It would be a waste of time. Yeah. But it really sounded like your parents gave you the liberty to find what it is that you want to do, and then that's how you found IT, which I think is fantastic. So then you were on the Gold Coast, you'd finish your degree, then where'd you go to from there?
So moved down to Sydney then. I'd been doing some freelance work in design mostly, and some website development as well, basic stuff. I'd also done an internship at an agency in Brisbane then as well. So I'd picked up some small clients, and then I was like, okay, sweet, move to the big smoke and get a job in an agency and do all of that. And I came down and I was looking for jobs, and it wasn't really looking very long. I got chatting to where we'd stayed was like an auntie and uncle of my girlfriend at the time, and their neighbour. I got chatting with him just over the fence when I had a beer. He's like, "Oh, I've got a electrical engineering business, and a bunch of other kind of businesses wrapped up in it, smaller ones. We need some marketing stuff done. Could you help us out?" Like, sweet, yeah, I can do that while I look for a job. Sweet. And that's kind of evolved into essentially taking on and running one of the businesses and starting a handful of other businesses. The guy the director, the founder of that business, is a serial entrepreneur and he's a very smart guy, and doesn't quite understand no.
Right.
And so he's just always got ideas. Let's do that. And so I was his kind of little guinea pig to like, okay, get that spun up and go and start that.
Right. No, as in like anything is possible, and like we can make it work.
Like, the accountant, for example, might say, "I don't think that's a good idea." Like, no, we're doing it.
Yeah, yeah.
So it was a lot of fun. So I had a lot of free reign there again. I made a lot of mistakes.
He seems like a really critical person, I guess, to have met at that point.
It really was actually, because I obviously stopped looking for jobs, and I was contracting to them, and I was doing contracting in other projects as well, so I had other clients, and so it was like a really important, it was a really important relationship working with those guys, because it provided a stability, a base for me to grow my freelancing business, and also learn a hell of a lot and make a lot of mistakes without. It was kind of, they were kind of paying for that, unfortunately for them. But I mean, no, they still got value out of it. But it was just like, that's just
without having the axe of like a corporate entity saying you're fired.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. Yeah. So that really was pivotal. And then after that, it was really great. I'd learned a hell of a lot, but I'd kind of got in this bit of a rut, and I was like making like quite good money, and I was just kind of like, why am I doing this? Like, where do I go from here? Like, what else do I do? And I wasn't really happy, and then so I ended up going traveling, as you do when you're kind of questioning life and you're feeling a bit lost.
Yeah.
And so I went traveling for a year and continued freelancing and traveling around, which was terrific. And I learned a lot in that year, going through Southeast Asia and spending mostly a month in each country. And I just spent a lot of time by myself reflecting. I was doing a lot of meditation work and yoga and that kind of thing. And it was a real year of self-exploration, and I just kind of trying to understand my purpose and what motivated me and what I wanted to do, and kind of existential questions. And that brought me back. Work, all the while was kind of growing. My freelance business was growing, and some bigger projects kind of brought me back to Australia again.
So you were working that whole time that you were traveling as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was, there was a big learning in that for me, which has really created the foundation of Digital Village as it is today, because I recognized the opportunity and the importance of having a balance in your work and life. And for me, that looked like doing work that I felt, two things, was producing meaningful value externally to society or to the customer, and then also that enabled me to live a life that I was happy with, that kind of gave me the time to do things that for my own kind of personal development. And through that period, I was reading The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss, and so they go through that whole phase, and that was really good too. And I spent a lot of time trying to. I did an experiment which I think it is documented on a website called jasonhardie.com, which isn't very well updated, but it is documented there, called the 50-50 experiment.
Okay, cool.
And it explores that journey I went on of trying to balance 50% of my time doing work and then 50% of the time building. So essentially building my business and my personal life and myself in the same way at the same time. So, and that they do complement each other. So if I was building myself personally, that reflected in the business positively, and then vice versa as well. So I kind of saw them as one and the same, and so there's that approach of personal development, which, as you know, starting business, you learn a lot about yourself through starting business, right?
Yeah.
And you're, and through personal development, you make better decisions in business.
Absolutely. So take me through the 50-50 experiment. I presume it's sleep excluded, right? So you sleep 8 hours a day, and the rest of that time is 50-50. Is that how you viewed it, or how did you measure it? I was
doing I was really just breaking things into doing, I think it was like 4 hours a day, something like that. And then, so I'd go and do some yoga or do, have these kind of practices that I would, that were really important for me for my personal development, meditation, this kind of stuff, even exploring where I was. And then just doing like a really deep focus of just smashing out 4 hours work. And it was really productive. And I was, rather than sitting there for 8 or 9 hours and just like kind of watching the time and, being really unproductive and sitting there like a dickhead for,
exactly.
So it was, a very fulfilling way to kind of live through that period of my life. And like since then, I mean, what that looked like to me, I'd kind of broken that into time of work-life balance. Since then, it's kind of evolved my understanding or perspective on work-life balance as being more an alignment between what you're doing and what that means to you. So the value that you're creating for in the work, or what the value that the organization that you're working for is creating, does that align with you? And does that have does that mean, what are you working for? Are you working to solve a problem or help someone, or are you just working for your paycheck? And for me, the paycheck wasn't important, and for a lot of millennials, it's not important as well, which is quite interesting. And so ultimately, creating an impact is more rewarding.
So effectively, what you're saying is, you didn't take on any projects that you didn't believe in, that were sort of impacting the society, or how?
That's true. I don't think they actually ever came up. There might have been one or two, but that is one way it kind of manifests. But ultimately, I think it's around aligning what you're, the work that you're doing. Is that, like, if you just kind of look at it from like, what are you doing, and why, and what impact? I mean, are you happy? Because it's going to be different for each person, right? So I don't want to sit here and put my values onto people.
Sure.
But if it's important to that person, like with the value being contributed, because that's going to look differently for each person, then you can feel really good about that. But if you're doing something that you're doing it purely to just to give your time for a paycheck, then that's a really unfulfilling kind of work experience.
Right.
So that's how I kind of see work-life balance.
Right.
Yeah, is aligning those things.
Yeah, it's almost as if like what you're against is trading time for money, but more so finding value in what it is that you're doing for work. I guess you've technically given us a glimpse of what work-life balance is for you, but if you had to summarize it into 2 sentences, how would you succinctly summarize that?
Work-life balance is about aligning who you are and how you want to live your life with what you do and how you do it.
Yeah, right.
So that's probably that's ultimately it for me.
Yeah, perfect. And that is the foundation of you building Digital Village.
Absolutely, because coming back from overseas to Australia, and the business was growing, and I needed to find people to work with because I was the bottleneck in the business, couldn't run all these projects, and I struggled to find people that I could rely on to run these projects. So there was this problem I needed to solve, and also this opportunity that I wanted to actualize. So the opportunity was a way of working that I found to be really rewarding, and I wanted to share with others, because there was a lot of my friends that through the same time had come out of uni and into these jobs that, like we were just talking about before, who were miserable. And I was like, why are you doing that?
Yeah.
And so I really, wanted to create an opportunity for other people to be able to work in this way and kind of experience what I had through that year overseas. Not exactly, but the kind of the personal reward that I got from it, and also the kind of work outcomes as well.
Yeah.
Or the financial benefit, and then the problem being needing to build a team of people that I could rely on to deliver all this work. So that was essentially the genesis of Digital Village. Right. At the heart of Digital Village, it is a people business. It's a network of people that everyone's a freelancer or a contractor or a small team. Small team of 3 to 10 people kind of thing. That so everyone in the network, we all share this kind of philosophy, I suppose, or motivation to do our own thing, just like you have. And to kind of step away from the 9 to 5 and have a bit of ownership and accountability in our work. And that's a very rewarding experience, having that accountability. So that's something that we talk about a lot. And so the idea of Digital Village was to create this structure for people to come together around this way of working, and then to actually collaborate together so you can take on bigger projects. Because I was like, surely there's got to be other people who are facing my problem, who are kind of limited by their own capacity and turning work away, and essentially putting a cap on the possibility or the potential of themselves in the business. So what's stopping us from working together, doing more work, and everyone wins? Yeah. So that's what we've been out to create, and we've actually created it, which is really, really rewarding, actually, really satisfying.
And so how big is the team exactly at the moment?
So the network there's about 200 people.
Yep.
And that's people. There's actually a lot more than that, but these are kind of people that are kind of semi-engaged in communication and things like that. Then there's more immediate people. There's probably about 30 to 40 people actively working on projects.
Yep.
And there's different kinds of members as well. So there's like individual freelancers or specialists, and they're kind of spread across the world, and they're just coming in on joining teams here and there. There's more developed teams that specialize in different technologies, and they'll essentially be provided a complete project, and then they can augment their own team from the network as well. So it kind of goes both ways, pollinates both ways. And then we curate teams as well. So independents can get work, and then there's a lot of combination of teams. So there might be a combination of like a team of 5 people coming in to do the development. Mm-hmm. And then there'll be a UX designer and maybe a BA or a data analyst or something like that to have this whole team curated to run a project. And
So effectively, if you had to explain this to me like I was 5, you effectively, a client comes to you, we need to build a website.
Yeah.
Digital Village relies on the network that you have, and you pull together a team of different professionals to deliver on that website or that project.
Yeah.
And it's not always a website. It could be
but it's a good example.
Anything.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you think about it, as a village, and we've got these different roles that we've created in the village that represent necessary capability in these types of projects. You go to the village and you go to the marketplace and you need to find, actually maybe that's a bad example, but you have a problem. And so you go and see the curator. The curator is someone that you share your problems with. And they'll be like, okay, great, I know just the people in mind. Let me go and curate a team for you. And that's usually made up of a bunch of specialists and a producer. The producer is a person who is responsible for the delivery of the project, and they work very closely with the client to bring that to life. And so the producer then can go and source from the village the different specialist people that he or she needs to run that project. And so the benefit being it's a very broad village but highly specialized. So on any given project, you can get a very specialized team.
So talking about the team specifically, not all of them have to be remote, right? It could be a team of 10 elsewhere. Would you know what sort of percentage of your network is remote?
Yeah, so it's actually probably 50-50.
Interesting.
Yeah. We've got some we work with a lot of developers offshore. That's just a good model, a good high value model. Because development in Australia is very expensive. Right. We also do that because some clients want to do that.
Yep.
But so if you think about it, there's curators and there's producers, and these are people who are kind of ultimately working most of the time in Digital Village, and everyone's a contractor.
Yep.
And then there's teams, and there's about 20 teams that we have, and these are teams that specialize in different technology and data practices. And they're pretty much, except for 3, all in Australia, spread across Melbourne and Brisbane and Byron Bay and Sydney. And then the greater network, it's like all over the place, probably mostly overseas in Australia. Yeah. Okay.
And so really, how much of your role is education of those teams? Because it's funny, the last episode we had Alex Solo on the show, and he spoke about remote working, and I sort of gave my thoughts on remote working and how I think collaboration is better done face to face in a team. But hearing your story, I wouldn't say you single-handedly changed my view on that, but traveling through Southeast Asia and managing to work remotely is certainly attractive to a lot of millennials. But no doubt there's a huge education piece there, because I completely agree with you. I'm a big fan of meditation and personal development, and that no doubt made you more productive in those 4 hours that you were working. Right. And likely you would have got 6 or 8 hours of productivity within those 4 because you focused on your personal development. How much of your time now is training based for your network?
Training to support the network?
Yeah.
I wouldn't say a hell of a lot, unfortunately. We do things. We do we kind of facilitate introductions so people can, so we do social events as well. But we do have a partnership with a company called Cred, they're also a client, but we've been working with them for a long time. And they're ultimately provide support and coaching in a challenging circumstance. So, for example, one of our project leads was dealing with a very difficult client. And so...
Difficult as in demanding, or...
Sometimes you get annoying clients.
In every industry. Yeah.
And he was doing his absolute best, and it was a very technically challenging project, very limited budget, very small time frames, and a highly demanding client.
Right.
And so that was and then amidst running other projects, he was very stressed out, and he was close to kind of throwing his hands up in the air and saying, I can't do this. And So we do all talk about this as a team. So we'd catch up, every week, and everyone kind of goes around and shares what's going on as a kind of more immediate community. But there's only so much advice we can all give, and so being able for that project lead to be able to reach out to Ronan, and actually Ronan as a coach. A business coach, and was able to mentor him in working through that, and it was a huge support for him, and ultimately that got him through the project. Was able to he learnt how to deal with that client and other clients in the future as well, and was a successful project, happy client. And he learned a lot from that as well.
Sounds like you want to do more of that, though.
I would love to do more of that. Because that's, especially as independent people working remotely, it can be really lonely and very stressful, and you have no support. And so as a community, that is something that we do, but we're looking to build more of it into like everyday. Not everyone values it, which is the challenge.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But it's super valuable, right? It's like you've highlighted it there.
Yeah.
So important in remote teams that there is a coaching element or training element.
Yeah.
To have not just necessarily that mentor, but that backstop of support to go to and request to ensure that they are delivering on the project efficiently and not feeling lonely. That's super invaluable. If we pull it back to work-life balance, I want to get an insight as to what a day in the life of Jason Hardie is like right now. So you wake up, stock standard day. Obviously, whilst you were traveling through Southeast Asia, you were doing a lot of yoga and meditation. How much of that have you brought into your current lifestyle now? And what does a normal day look like for you?
It's actually pretty good at the moment. It's not always like that, so I don't want to kind of paint that picture that it's always been like that. As the business was getting going a couple of 2 or 3 years ago, I was trying to, run 15 projects at a time by myself and end up burning out, and I was 7 in the morning till 3 at night. It was just no good.
Yep.
So that's, that happened. And then that kind of forced me to step back again, so there was a lot of learning in that again. But at the moment, it typically looks like I'll wake up and do yoga or meditation early in the morning, do some other meetings or work, and then if I'm working from home, I'll go for a surf during at midday or something like that, depending on the wind, and then get back into work again, and then usually some kind of activity in the afternoon.
Do you sort of stick to the sort of the 5 a.m. club mentality where you do an hour of your stuff in the morning, or?
I kind of, it's kind of turned out like that.
Okay.
Not necessarily by, it just kind of fitted in with, because I like to have the mornings with space.
Okay.
And even Mondays in general, I try and write off completely of having no meetings, because I just find, I hate dreading the weekend and then coming into, but I'll usually do a lot of kind of thinking and strategic work on Mondays, because I kind of just, go sit in a cafe or something and just think about things and do writing and, and then, but other than that, it's probably pretty standard, I guess, now.
See, I think this is super invaluable, because particularly in the early days when people are in that startup stage or that scale-up stage, they view more hours put in as a greater output. And I think that's the downfall, right? Particularly in your space, like you said, 7 a.m. to 3 a.m. at night. And I presume that's because you're working with talent or professionals overseas, and that's what you had to do to stay awake. But that's a lot of hours to be putting in, and if you aren't clear on where you're putting your hours or dividing that between work and personal development, then you are going to burn out. And I think we see so many, particularly young professionals as well as young business owners, entrepreneurs, who get burnt out. And I would be interested to see the statistic as to, they say businesses fail within the first 2 years. I wonder how much of that is down to entrepreneurial burnout.
I think it'd be quite high, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because, I think you can continue pushing for your goal, but if you go 2 years in and you're like, holy shit, I can't find a way out, which obviously you've done so, but how did you manage to go, okay, this is not sustainable? I have no doubt at that point you were like, I need to keep managing these 15 projects. Otherwise, financially, I can't bring on the next person, whatever it might be. What was that switch?
I'm not sure exactly what it was looking back, but I don't know if I can even answer it. I can't think, but it was really probably because I did burn out, and I remember just really thinking, I can't do this, especially when I'd spent so much time kind of spruiking about work-life balance, and I used to justify it by saying, well, but this is my purpose, this is what I'm doing, and there is an element of that, but, and I'd always kind of like, well, I'm working to create something, and this is just a necessity or a requirement to kind of get there, and there is an element of truth to that, but at the same time, what's the cost of that, and is it sustainable, which it could have really gotten to the point where, like, gosh, it's just not worth it, and then just collapse in a heap and the projects fail anyway, and then it's all done anyway. So that was a risk as well. So it's, I think it's one of those things that you do need to take as an entrepreneur or as a professional with a lot of pressure on and a high workload, to take a step back, have a bit of perspective around what's important, and put some structures in place because you need to look after yourself. Yeah,
I would say that's definitely it. You've highlighted quite openly that you love starting your mornings with space, whether that's yoga, meditation, or any form of retrospect, going down to the beach, chilling on the sand and, watching the waves come in and just thinking. No doubt, I think that there's probably an element of that's missing in a lot of entrepreneurial journeys that leads to burnout, no doubt. So that's probably what came to you, is that space and that thought around, why am I doing this? How can we do this better?
Absolutely. I mean, it's certainly, when you do hit that point, it does raise those questions, and they're good healthy questions to ask. But is it worth it? Like, what do you, and especially in the startup land, there's like this kind of expectation to grind and push and Gary V style, just
absolutely.
And it's just it's kind of stupid, I think. It's it's like, life's too important to kind of to miss, and you got to appreciate what's there. And if you're going to ignore it and avoid it all by just getting caught up in small things, then I don't think that's helpful.
Yeah, it's so funny about Gary V. I like him, but I'm going to call him out now, and I'm just going to say, mate, like, we never see his personal life, really. The guy is always on.
Yeah, I know,
and it's,
right?
It's so against the purpose. Like, everyone now looks at that and goes, I've always got to be on. I've always got to be hustling.
Yeah, right.
Just
but is that
settle
reality?
The fuck down.
I mean, if it is, then wow.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I just find it ironic that he doesn't show any of his personal life. His Instagram is all hustle.
Right.
So Gary V, I'm calling you out. Just putting that out there. But what do you think obviously that's a key challenge to work-life balance.
Yeah.
Right? What do you think is the vision for the future for work-life balance? Are we going to see more of it? Are we going to see less of it? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's work-life balance is kind of probably a bit of a misleading term, because it's not so much about, because balance, it still kind of suggests a time thing, which is kind of true. But I think for the future, it's more about impact. And so that being the kind of common denominator between work and life. So what is my purpose personally, and how does that translate into my work? And if they're one and the same, then that's a very balanced work life. And I think for the future, that's becoming increasingly important. For millennials and Gen Zs, it's research that certainly shows that that's more important than climbing the corporate ladder and getting that house and getting that car and so on. So I think that's really a really refreshing kind of truth that is certainly evident in the way people are making decisions in their personal and professional lives. Because this is the kind of change that the world needs. If we don't do something soon, these are the things we need, and so this is the kind of where we're at. So I think that's kind of positive future for us.
And what are your thoughts on, I guess, we're now moving to a space where it's, I wouldn't say it's post-COVID, without a doubt. We're still in the middle of it, but we're starting to see more companies transition back to full-time work. And, I've seen companies say we're now full-time, 5 days a week, and there's been staff that have left on the basis of flexibility.
Right.
You're seeing companies who are saying 4 days a week. I think it's very individual, no doubt. But what are your thoughts on the future workplace and work balance? Are we going to see more flexible working? Are we going to see less of it? What are your thoughts?
I think you touched on a really, you were saying before about how, in terms of collaboration and people getting together, it's in terms of productivity, you can't beat that. Like, it's just a fact. A team of people getting around a whiteboard to solve a problem, you can't beat that. But it's not necessary for everyone to be in the office all the time. So, and a lot of people need to come into the office, and they need that kind of social environment and connection with their workmates. And then a lot of people like being from home and work very well in that environment. So the answer is hybrid, or both. And that's happening more and more, especially in the way new offices are getting set up as well. You've probably seen this actually, there's a lot of space in the city. I don't know if that's changing it now, but there's
still a lot of space.
Yeah. And actually, what are we going to... It's a big problem, right?
Yeah.
But there's a big opportunity there because there is certain organizations that are talking and actually have planned to do these... start to mix business models a little bit of introducing other propositions such as, if you live out of town, or now that you don't need to be in the city all the time, you can go and, live in a rural area or a regional area. That's always important. But, say you need to come to the city once a week or 2 days a week or something, which is kind of a normal thing now.
Yeah.
As part of that workspace, rather than it being a traditional office space, it's like a hotel, so they can go and stay the night there and do a work or 2 work days, stay a night, and then go back to home. So that's that. These things are happening, which is pretty cool. Like, I think that's a really good idea.
You're seeing a lot of people move out to, whether it's the tree change or sea change, and if they're going to move, 2 hours is a stretch, but 3, 4, 5 hours away, like, they're going to want to stay somewhere in the city. You wouldn't necessarily want to pay a hotel. So you're saying there are spaces. I've not seen this yet, but you're saying
I don't think they've built them yet.
Okay.
They're definitely
little pods that people can sort of sleep in.
As well, the whole like co-workspace thing is really taking off because it provides flexible, high value, a lot of really state-of-the-art facilities, but the costs spread across lots of organizations, so it's not a massive cost to the organization. Their employees get awesome benefits such as a place to sleep and all of that, gym and all that kind of stuff.
Particularly the WeWorks, right? Because the WeWorks of the world are in different cities around the world. They're almost going to become an accommodation risk, right? Like, as in, they will start providing accommodation for members who want to stay one night, and you might just have to book it in and stay there. I think it's a brilliant idea.
Yeah, It's I think it's an interesting kind of glimpse into what the future holds for city life, and our life as humanity, kind of comparing it to 50 years ago.
Yeah.
And how technology is just kind of, expediting the way we live into, these future states that we used to see in movies, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been incredible.
Yeah.
Mate, I want to thank you, Jace. Like, from, a boy from the bush to coming through to the IT space and having a vision like that, which is fantastic. I've really enjoyed this chat, mate. So thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks, mate. I have too.
Lastly, do you want to plug any of your shows? I know you've got a show coming up. Is that right?
Yeah. So we, yep. So every month we do like a DV show, Digital Village show. Similar to this, it's a video thing. Have some guests. Cool. Next week it is Wednesday. We're chatting with a author of the book called Cult Status, Tim Duggan.
Perfect.
Which is will be a really interesting conversation, actually. I highly recommend reading the book. It's about purpose-driven leadership and organizations, and essentially the modern business ultimately just, the purpose of business being to create impact rather than, or a combination of that and profit. So very very well worth reading if you're looking to start a business, and it's a very good place to start. Even I know listeners of this are business owners, so if there is people that are thinking about starting a business or anything like that, that's a really good book to read. So we'll be speaking to Tim, and we'll also be speaking with Tegan Smith, who is the CEO of a data company or in the pharmaceutical or medical research space, and talking about her journey of running a company in a very male-dominated world.
Great topic.
And also the kind of story of data and the kind of it's a scary area, and how we use data, how we understand data, and what is done with that data is it's a big concern as well. So that'll be a really interesting conversation as well. Perfect. So you can go to digitalvillage.network/stream, and you'll find some details on it there.
Perfect. And you've also got your own website, jasonhardie.com, which has the 50/50 challenge.
It does, yeah.
Perfect. I love the personal branding. Mate, thanks again. Thank you for coming on the show, and I'll definitely be tuning into next week's episode of DV Village.
Cool. Thanks, mate.
Thank you, mate. Appreciate it. Socius, thank you for joining us today. Please hit the subscribe button if you've enjoyed this episode. And if you'd like to be part of the Socius community, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn to stay in touch. Cheers.